Hi, class. It's your professor. I am planning on reading a little bit to you from Wired for Story. Um, Part of the reason that this book is our textbook, and even though I've just given you a little bit of it, mostly to save people money, we've gone to a lot of ebooks here at APUS and AMU because it was such a light bulb moment for me as a writer. I mean, I had published 30 books by the time I got a hold of her book and went, oh my gosh, I needed to fix this. I needed to understand what is happening in the reader's brain. It doesn't matter who you are or why you think you're reading. Our brain has one job and one job only, and that's to keep us alive. To that end, it is constantly like a computer clicking around, almost like we were looking at like the Terminator, where it zeroes in on things. It's constantly on the lookout for us, even while we're reading, even though we think we're reading for pleasure to escape. So I looked at that and I went, this is really interesting, because if this is true, then knowing how to feed that is really, really important. And so I'm going to read a couple of my favorite passages so that you understand a little bit more about where I'm coming from in terms of critique, in terms of helping you step up to the next level, because she helped me step up to the next level, and I had published 30 books. And by the way, none of them are self-published. So I've seen myself grow as a writer because of putting her work into play. Also, I have had 3 other students from APUS that have taken this creative writing class also become published writers. So she's a good deal. Talking about our brain and what is happening here, she says, when we pick up a book, we're jonesing for the feeling that something out of the ordinary is happening. We crave the notion that we've come in at a crucial juncture in someone's life and not a moment too soon. What intoxicates us is the hint that not only is trouble brewing, but it's long-standing and about to reach its critical mass. This means that from the first sentence, we need to catch sight of that breadcrumb trail that will lure us deeper into the thicket. And I think that's so true. She said, I've heard it said that fiction, all stories for that matter, can be summed up by a single sentence. All is not as it seems. Which means that we're hoping for, in that opening sentence, is the sense that something is about to change, and not necessarily for the better. Simply put, and this is very simply put, we are looking for a reason to care. So for a story to grab us, not only must something be happening, but also there must be a consequence we can anticipate. As neuroscience reveals, and again, this is important because this is scientific facts about how our brain works. As neuroscience reveals, what draws us into a story and keeps us there is the firing of our dopamine neurons, signaling that intriguing information is on its way. And so when I read that, I was like, oh, wow. She's kind of giving us the recipe for feeding the thing that's going to buy our books and buy our next books. And so she talks about something that is really, really important in my world, and that's what Da Vinci called curiosity. Another great book, if you ever are looking for personal self-growth, is How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci. Perhaps and arguably one of the most amazing minds ever. I mean, he developed the parachute 400 years before it was needed, and he knew that man could fly. He said, we are always looking for the why beneath what's happening on the surface, not only because our survival might depend on it, but because it's exhilarating. It makes us feel something, namely curiosity. Having our curiosity piqued is visceral, and it leads to something even more potent, the anticipation of knowledge that we are now hungry for, a sensation caused by that pleasurable rush, again, of dopamine. Because being curious is necessary for survival, like what's rustling in those bushes. Nature encourages it. And what better way to encourage curiosity than to make it feel good? That is why once your curiosity is roused as a reader, you have an emotional, vested interest in finding out what happens next, and bingo, you feel that delicious sense of urgency, hello dopamine, that all good stories instantly ignite. So, this is what's reading the book. There's something that happens here. The heart is a muscle. It feels nothing. Everything that happens in our world emotionally comes from the brain. And she's saying, understanding the creature that you are wanting to feed makes it a whole lot easier to know what to feed it and how to deliver that. She said, so why is the Da Vinci Code one of the best-selling novels of all time? Because from the very first page, readers are dying to know what happens next. And that's what matters most. A story must have the ability to engender a sense of urgency from that first sentence. Everything else, fabulous characters, great dialogue, vivid imagery, luscious language, is gravy. She said, but make no mistake, and I think this is really important. Learning to write well is not synonymous with learning to write a story. And the two, writing well, is secondary. And I think it's really true. Being a good writer does not mean you can tell a good story. It's just like people who knows how to do something aren't necessarily good teachers because they can't tell the story. The telling of a story is something that is so instrumental to our growth. It's how we think in stories. That's what they find in the cave paintings, right? Stories. And she's saying, if we know this, then, and you know how to attack this, then you know how to sate the reader's need for curiosity and how to keep the brain thinking what's happening next, what's around the next corner. Oh my gosh, danger, danger, Will Robinson. If the reader can't feel what matters and what doesn't, then nothing matters, including finishing the story. The question for writers then is, where do these feelings come from? And the answer is very simple: the protagonist. And so she talks about the real story is how what happens affects the protagonist and what she does as a result. This means that everything in a story gets its emotional weight and meaning based on how it affects the protagonist. I think when you think back to series that you like to watch, is it the story? Oh, I love the storyline. It's the character driving the story. I would watch anything that has a certain character in it. Dexter's one of them. Dexter has a new series after 10 years coming out. I will watch Dexter if Dexter becomes a Chippendale because I love Dexter. He's the draw. We are drawn to people, not necessarily stories. So think about the shows that you watch and why you watch them. Watch the shows with the idea that when do you feel something? Do you feel something when something happens to the main character? Probably. And so it's why I think this book is so big for me. Readers intuitively know what neuroscientists have discovered. Everything we experience is automatically coded in emotion. Why? It's our version of computers' ones and zeros, and it's based on a single question: will it hurt me or will it help me? Because the brain, which makes something like 11 million decisions a minute, is doing one thing. It's gathering information in the event this ever happens to us. So I write zombie novels. There are not zombies. But there are scary things out there. There are people that will doggedly come after you. There are moments that we get that fear that, oh my God, there's somebody outside my window. Whether it's a zombie or a human being, doesn't really matter. Our brain is looking to, and it collects this information. What would I do if this was happening to me? And it stores that information. And that's what's happening on a subconscious level. As you're reading for enjoyment, you're really getting this. Your brain, because remember, it's not, your brain is not linear. It has layers to it. The subconscious layer is constantly looking, oh, this is important information. I didn't know this. I didn't know that you could use X as a weapon. Someday, if that would ever happen or come up, and you are able to actually reach for a glass vase that you wouldn't have thought about was there, that you might have because your brain has somehow taken that information. So again, it comes down to understanding that our brain is like a computer that runs on a lot of different levels. Our job is to learn what's going on with those levels and how to feed those levels. Because ultimately, what moves a story forward are the protagonist's actions, reactions, and decisions, rather than the external events that trigger them. And I think that's the big thing. The big question here is, that's what readers come for. Their unspoken, hardwired question is, if something like this were to happen to me, what would I feel like? How would I react? So whether it's a love story, a zombie apocalypse, outer space, if this happened to me, what would it feel like? And how would I react? And so if you're serious about learning about the brain, this is the best book. Now, she does have Story Genius. She has a couple others out. They're all pretty much an offshoot of Wired for Story, which is, like I said, it was a game changer for me. My sales went up. My writing got better. My reviews got better. So why wouldn't I share this with you? I'm not saying it's the only one out there. I've read them all. And some of them are erudite and snobby. Some of them are, I don't really want to know what you eat. I read Rita Mae Brown's book, and it was about making sure that you worked out and that you didn't drink. And you're blah, 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 blah. That's not... This was applicable because 100% of us who are reading have a brain. 100% of us have chemistry things that happen in the brain when certain things are going on. This is our client. This is our reader. This is our money, is the brain. And knowing what it's looking for and when it's looking for it and how to set that up, to me, was a no-brainer, truly. So I wanted to share that for a lot of reasons. And not just because a couple of you had questions about why are we reading this. It's the best one out there. I've read them all. This is my educated opinion, my writing opinion. I have been to and spoken at dozens of writing conferences, and I can't tell you how many of these books I have sold. I can't tell you how many of my writing colleagues have, and by writing colleagues, I've met a lot and have a lot of high-end writer friends that are well more established than I am. Loved this book. I went, holy, this is an amazing, this is great. It unlocks so many questions that you might have. So sharing that is something that I do, because if Dean Koontz and Amy Tan are like, this is great stuff, I wish I would have had this when I first started writing, then you know it's definitely something that you want to hand out and share. And I read it probably twice a year to remind myself of what makes a story, to remind myself of the one key thing. When the reader stops feeling, they stop reading. And you may say, oh, well, that's not true. That's not me. Nah, you're wrong. So I thought that it's just, and I had thought about actually having it as a text, but we were going through a period when we were creating the courses to try to make things less expensive. You know, we used to use in our literature courses those big, thick Norton anthologies. Do you know how much it costs to ship those to our soldiers in Afghanistan and Iran and Iraq and to all sorts of theaters around the globe? A lot of money for them, a lot of money for us. So we went to ebooks. At some point, I'm hoping that we'll be able to transition that to an ebook. But for now, if writing is something that you really, really want to do, whether it's just for yourself or to become published, I strongly recommend the whole thing, because it's a game changer, and she's well respected throughout the industry. So that's that. I'll probably do a couple more of these. I have some older ones. If you see me with spiked hair, you know they're older because this is my COVID hair. But I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that you kind of get, some of the nuances that we're looking at when we come down to our final piece, which is get your thing started. I took a course on great first lines, and went back and changed all of the first chapters. See, that's the beauty of writing in today's world, is that you can do that. You're not stuck with, okay, this is the only book being published and you can't change things. The mark of a potentially great writer is someone who can go back and say, this could be better. This needs to be better and be changed. So one of the things that I recognized was great first lines, that you have to start off. And if you think about it again, I relate everything to Hollywood because I have friends, who work in Hollywood. I'm only 2 hours outside of it. So a lot of my things, and I'm a big movie person. I just finished Squid Games on Netflix, and it was just it's such an awesome book. Not a film, not made in Hollywood, made in Korea. Loved it. But I think that I try to think of, again, in terms of movies, that's something everybody can relate to. If you notice in today's movie, you're plopped down often right in the middle of action. You may not even know what's going on, but you plop down into action because that's what we're geared to. We don't have the long soliloquy. You don't have time to go on and on about this. Nobody wants to know what the house looks like. And if somebody were to do that in a movie, you'd be out of there. The average moviegoer gives a movie 7 minutes. 7 minutes. So you have to start off now. You have to grab them in the first 6 inches and pull them into the story. Whatever that is, whether it's a dialogue, whether it's action, description's not going to do it. Back in the day, yeah. We're not back in the day. We are in a time where we want to know, we want to feel, and we want to feel it today. We want to get connected to the main character today, not 10 pages, 12 pages down the road. So when you're crafting, think about that. Think about in terms of when you're watching a movie, you want to get in it. You want to get, if somebody says, it was a good movie, it was a little slow at first. Slow at first is dead at first. So it's just the nature of the being today. We are a fast food world. It's not good or bad, it's just what it is. So I hope you enjoyed this. Feel free to comment about it in any of the discussions. I do have other, again, a little bit older videos that I will post as well, because some of them are still, they talk about character building, world building, things like that. You have a 5-time award-winning author as your teacher. Ask questions, whatever they are. If you want to get up into I have questions, I have questions about publishing, questions about marketing, this is your time to get your questions answered. So you are not stepping outside the boundaries. I would love nothing more than to have a class full of students who got published one day. So if getting published is your goal, you paid for this, I'm right here. Ask your questions. Feel free in the first dialogue discussion box. Get your questions answered. Away we go. So have a great weekend, and I will see you later.